Let's move on to question number 2. My son has SM and has not talked in school for almost 2 years, but speaks at home. He is now telling me that he will only talk in school if he can change schools. He is currently in middle school and heading into 9th grade. Do you think changing schools is a good idea here? If so, should we consider special ed or a private school or a regular school?
This is a great question. What your son is feeling is that everyone knows that I'm the person that doesn't talk, and he feels that. So if he did start to talk, which by the way, most kids with SM don't just start to talk. There are some individuals that have skills, and when they do make a change, they can speak, but that's usually an individual that speaks in all situations, not just not speaking in school. In other words, they don't speak in school, but they speak everywhere else, out and about in the real world. They have friends they talk to, people, relatives, aunts, uncles, and it's pretty much isolated into the school setting. But again, I don't know that this would occur, and it's not as common as people think that just making that change works. It does for a few. I don't also know what else is going on with your son. Again, I keep going back to SM, social communication anxiety, or not speaking is a symptom, and we have to figure out what else may be going on with your son. When you mention moving to a special education school, what is the warrant for going to a special education school? Because they need to still have training on how to work with your child. At least at the Smart Center, we work with the child to help build the skills. We work with parents to train them. But we also work very, very closely with the school to provide appropriate school-based accommodations and interventions. If you're in a public school, you have the ability to get an IEP or a 504 plan to help your son in terms of interventions that need to be done, working with, let's say, a school counselor, a psychologist, a speech and language pathologist, etc. It really depends on the child and their needs. So I would be requesting an IEP or a 504. If they have an IEP or a 504 and they are getting trained by an expert in SM and your child is still not making progress, one, are they implementing those strategies and interventions and proper accommodations? And is your child participating? If you have a child in middle school, it's really difficult to treat a child with SM in middle school without any of their involvement. And I would say, what is their involvement and internal motivation? And sometimes using external motivation to help them working towards something they really need or want, privileges, etc., and really being very strict with your goals that you're working on, parent goals, child goals, coming back for therapy regularly. Do you have outside goals that are very kind of relevant to where your child is on the social communication bridge and what they're working on? Do they know what they're working on? So again, a lot of questions I have. And moving to a private school, although I'm an advocate of private schools for sure, I think there's a place for that. They aren't by law required to follow school-based accommodations and interventions such as an IEP or a 504. So if they're willing to provide accommodations, interventions, they tell you they are, and you meet with them and they work with your clinician to be able to put together a plan, and they're willing to work with you, I have no problem with that. However, it may not occur. So you don't want to just make a move without knowing where you're moving and their vested interest in their ability, not just their interest. They may want to help your son, but maybe they don't have the resources in some of these private schools to be able to provide the accommodations, interventions that your son needs.
So in summary, it sounds like changing schools isn't necessarily the answer. It's more, you're kind of dodging the issue, right? You need to focus on treatment, focus on progressing into speech versus just changing schools and
right.
Trying to almost avoid.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying with the hope that if I change schools, I'll just speak. But my question is, one, is your child speaking in a lot of other situations? Are they out and about in the real world with the goals that you're implementing to help bring them into social communication in a store, in a restaurant? Are they answering their aunt or uncle? Are they initiating questions when they need to? Do they have friends they already speak to and have a relationship with? Do they have those social skills? Do they have those communication skills? Are they verbal? Are they verbally responsive, initiative, elaborative? Do they have appropriate speech and language skills? So you can see there's a lot of questions I have. There are schools that, unfortunately, even a public school that has an IEP or a 504, they just may not have the resources or the ability to provide these accommodations, interventions. And in addition, perhaps your son is not an active participant in this. Middle school, they need to be an active participant. And if they're not, that's where you need to be working in therapy to help your son participate in this process and figure out what is it that we can do to help your son participate. And is there something that's being missed? Is it possible your son has some learning challenges, speech and language challenges? Is he on the autism spectrum? I bring that up because a child that is not participating in their treatment, that lacks internal motivation, like globally, being on the spectrum is something that we do see in kids like that, where they just have a difficult time planning out their goals and having that internal motivation for change. And what are your parenting skills? What are you working on? What is the accountability you have for goals that you're working on every week? If you're married or have a partner, is your partner participating in these goals? Are you out and about working on this in the real world? Is he having social interaction with other peers? There's so much here. Is he involved in clubs or activities outside of school? Is he speaking there? So you say move schools, but what is he doing outside of school now in terms of social communication?